Just whilst people are still coming in, I thought I would do a couple of things. Might firstly introduce myself as the host of today's session. My name is Nathan Reynolds, and I am the Program Engagement Lead at Leadership Victoria. And also with us from Leadership Victoria today is Scott Coe, who's our Program Manager, Lisa Croxford, who is two lead facilitators on the Williamson Leadership Program, David Middlemast, who is our Marketing and Communications Coordinator and moderator of today's session. We also have three alumni with us, Dr. Fiona Kelly from the 2020 cohort, Darren Riggin from the 2019 cohort, and also Craig Rowlands from the 2019 cohort. And just a few Zoom etiquette things, if you like. So the first thing I should mention is that this session is being recorded and will be made available for people to view. For anyone who wanted to have another look at this session, you can go back and see it. Also for people who have missed out on attending the session today, which means that normally Chatham House rules would apply in Leadership Victoria and Williamson Leadership Program sessions, but today, because we're being recorded, the Chatham House rules do not apply. Please also put yourself on video. We want to see you, we welcome you. And the big thing about Leadership Victoria and our programs, and particularly the Williamson Leadership Program, is it's very much about the people in the room. We all learn from each other. So it would be great to have you all on camera as much as possible. We'll keep you on mute for the session, but there will be a chance to ask questions directly to either Lisa or to our alumni here today, in which case David, our moderator, will take you off mute. If you would like to ask a question, you just need to raise your hand to be able to do that. You can also put questions in the chat stream as we go along today, and so if you don't get a chance to ask your question directly, perhaps David or one of us might be able to pick up that question from the chat stream and put that to the group. Yes, and I'd like to start, of course, by acknowledging that I am actually coming to you today from the lands of the Boonwurrung people and of the Kulin Nation. And I do pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging, and also recognising their continuing connection to the land, to the waters and to their culture, and also that Aboriginal sovereignty was never ceded. So welcome. Leadership Victoria is an innovative and independent social enterprise, and our vision is for a stronger society through purposeful leadership. And we exist to foster leadership that inspires, that connects and transforms. And the Williamson Leadership Program is very much the embodiment of that vision and that purpose. And in fact, Williamson has been going for 30 years or more. I think we're into our 33rd, potentially, Williamson Leadership Program. And in that time, it has attracted leaders from a diverse and broad range of industries and sectors, but all who are keen to learn from each other,
Nathan, you just went on mute.
A glitch in the system.
We got you, all who are keen to learn from each other.
All who are keen to learn from each other and really broaden their outlook of the world and of themselves, deepen their experience, and of course, give back to the community. And you might actually find yourself here today because you're curious about that. You're curious about, how can I make an impact? In what ways can I think I've got something to give, but in what ways can I do that? How can I give more? How can I give back? And so you may be wondering whether the Williamson Leadership Program is the right leadership program for you to be able to do that, to find your purpose, to help define the next few years, to help shape your world and the world around you. And in this session, you'll hear from three alumni who will talk to you about their experiences of the Williamson Leadership Program, and you'll have a chance to ask them questions directly after they've spoken. And you'll also hear from Lisa Croxford, who will tell you what you'll learn on the Williamson Leadership Program, but more importantly, how you'll learn. And so, speaking of Lisa, that might be an opportunity to introduce you to the group. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Nathan, and welcome, folks, on this beautiful Melbourne autumn day. The sun is shining where I am, and it's looking pretty gorgeous outside. For folks who've just been joining since we've started, if you can turn your camera on, that would be awesome. We'd love to be able to see your faces so that we can engage with you. So, the Williamson Leadership Program. I'm interested, for those, joining, can you pop in the chat for me? What do you already know about Williamson? Or what have you heard about Williamson? And if you can pop your messages in there while I'm giving you a bit of an overview of the program. So one of the questions you might have is, why would you do Williamson now? Over the last 12 months or so, we have had wrought on a very large scale the types of changes and challenges that we as a community, as a society, and as the globe are facing. And the leadership program is about exploring leadership as a part of life and adaptive leadership, and that life is in fact a leadership lab, and there are many opportunities to exercise leadership if we choose to do so. So right now we have a need for greater flexibility in the ways in which we exercise leadership. We have a need for different ways of thinking. We have a need for understanding of different approaches, and all of these things we explore in the program. The types of things that you will walk away with are a broader and a deeper understanding of approaches to leadership and the themes that sit at the heart of many of the social challenges that face us. A greater sense of personal obligation to contributing to our society. You'll have an increased sense of confidence in exercising leadership. You will have an increased ability to connect with others more empathetically, to engage more effectively in change and transformative change. And it's also an individually transformational experience in the ways in which you make meaning in your actions so that you're better equipped to operate in complex environments. So I can see in the chat some of the comments from you about what you know about Williamson already. Some of you might have, and I can see, you've had managers or colleagues or mentors who've completed the program and have recommended it to you and spoken highly of the experience. Yeah, and absolutely, I can also see there is a real community that exists around the program. And you will probably hear that as well when you hear from our LV alumni. Folks talk about how Williamson has changed their lives. It was a point in time that sent them in a different direction that would not have happened without Williamson. One of the unique things about the Williamson program, and it's a difference that exists when you're thinking about, how might I think about Williamson in comparison to other developmental or learning opportunities I have, is that Williamson focuses almost entirely on vertical development. So when we think about human development, it can be conceptualized in two ways. One is horizontal or skill set. So it's this idea of instilling more skills and competencies into us as adults, and it's about our technical knowledge that we can collect and measure and display. It's about the what you think and the what you believe. Vertical development is more about mindset. It refers to an advancement in our thinking capacities, in our awareness, in our imagination, and our ability to feel, conceive, and believe, and think in more complex, systemic, strategic, and interdependent ways. So the skills are about what you know. The mindset is about how you think and how you believe. Yeah. So I've just picked up another comment that Anthony has popped in the chat about the person who said to him that Williamson was a life-changing experience. It was challenging and developed her concept of leadership. That is what we do in the vertical development space. An analogy that can be easier to grasp with this is that horizontal development, it's like installing a new app on your phone, right? You can easily buy it from the App Store, pop it on your phone. Vertical development is like upgrading the operating system, expanding the total capacity. And that's what we work with you to do over the Williamson program. How we do that, and I'll share my screen with you to share with you our learning model. So throughout the year, you'll be exposed to principles and competencies for leadership, and we engage very deliberately and intentionally with storytelling for purpose. We build really strong holding environments in the Williamson community so that we can regulate the heat, which means we're building an environment where you can be challenged and tested, that make you feel uncomfortable, but also then regulates it in a way that makes that learning not, blowing your head out of the water, but keeps you engaged in the space. And it's driven with heart, purpose, and ethics, all around disrupting and changing the way that you exercise leadership and the way that you make progress on complex challenges. We also, throughout Williamson, explore a series of themes. If you think about the issues that are facing us as humankind, climate change, COVID, Black Lives Matter, Me Too movement, think about the challenges that are facing your families, your work, and for you personally. At the heart of these sit central themes. Themes of belonging, of agency, power, privilege, enchantment, and prosperity. And we explore all of these themes throughout Williamson and invite you to think about and learn about systems and how it's possible to recognise at the heart of the many issues that we face, there sit the common themes. To give you a bit of a taster of what it is the program actually looks like over the course of the year, I'll share with you our Williamson wheel. So in this you will see the overall pattern and structure of the program. So at the heart of it sits leadership days. These are days focused on practicing and exploring the leadership principles and competencies. So that's in the green. You can see the theme days that are in blue. And these are days that are experiential, that expose you to new perspectives and experiences. We then have a series of immersives that offer a deeper exploration of the themes, but also the principles and competencies that we're learning about. And within all that, in the orange, there are opportunities where you're working in small groups, either through case consultations, talking about your live leadership challenges, or through collaborative leadership action networks. So group work that's oriented towards picking a challenge that our society is facing and getting your hand stuck into it. So there we go, Nathan. You're on mute.
I am on mute. There we go. Hopefully off mute now. Thank you, Lisa. And if you did have questions for Lisa, feel free to ask them when we open up our Q&A a little bit later in this session. But firstly, I would now like to introduce Dr. Fiona Kelly, who took part in the Williamson Leadership Program in 2020.
Thank you, Nathan. Can you all hear me fine there? All right. I want to start by saying I'm sitting in the Melbourne CBD and I acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Burrong and the Wurundjeri people of the Eastern Kulin Nation, and I pay respect to elders past, present, and any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. Why have I started with that, and what does it mean to me? I acknowledge that for most of my life I was a bystander in relation to Australia's Indigenous peoples. And I want to start today by saying that I will be forever grateful to Williamson Program for educating me, giving me the opportunity to listen to Aboriginal leaders and learn the true history about our ancient culture that I think is really vital to the maturity of this nation. It is one of the most important lessons I had at Williamson, and one that will influence me as I go forward in my leadership journey. So what's the impact of Williamson on my leadership? So leadership comes pretty naturally to me. I can lead a group pretty easily, but what I didn't realise was how much it was exhausting me, and I didn't acknowledge that to myself. And I didn't understand that I was trying to do it all. So I was trying to be everything to everyone. I was doing new programs. I was getting people going. And to be honest, when I applied for Williamson, it was just another thing to tick off my box and to achieve, because I like to achieve things. So I achieve. But when I came into Williamson, it was nothing like I expected. And it was quite a shock. And I thought I'd come out of this program learning these business skills and that I would be able to be a CEO or be on boards or be a chairman and things like that. And absolutely, that's what it has taught me, because you do learn some really valuable business skills. And, you know, and you heard Lisa talking about things like, well, it's even just like learning to listen to unusual voices and negotiating a bit better and sitting back and listening a bit better. But the real impact for me on my leadership was the personal insights, and it's a really deep dive. And Williamson really makes you look into what makes you tick and how you interpret and react to situations and people, and also how you start to think outside of yourself and to see a much larger picture. And you sort of, you know, something has to change. And I think that's why a lot of people are probably here listening to us today, but I'm not quite sure you know what that question is or what that change needs to be. And I feel that Williamson asks that question and answers it as well. So the real impact is the growth in my personal development and about managing myself. And it's not a new me. I don't feel like I've discovered a new person or anything like that. But I feel it was a complete reset of fundamentally who I was. And it was sort of the person who, over the years, and I don't know how many of you feel like this, but I feel like I was being a particular person because that's what the world expected of me. And I was conforming, and I was being what needed to be expected, and to sort of rise up the ranks and be everything that I could possibly be, when I've actually realised that it was a lot more about that. It was actually about stepping back rather than stepping forward all the time, and to actually just question a little bit more about what you're doing and why. And I think where my leadership has gone now is that I'm a much better leader in that I listen a lot better to people. I actually know when to say no now, and I know what my limitations are. And I think that by doing that, it's actually made me a better leader in the things that need to get done. The other thing as well is it was a real broadening of my mind about the issues that are outside of myself. So things like my privilege. I never understood what my privilege was. I'm the child of migrants. And I didn't realise I had so much privilege until I saw what that was all about. Things like racism, things like poverty, things like people in prisons, redemption, enchantment, which is one of my favourites. That's learning just to fall in love with the beauty of the world. And it just gives you just such a broader view. One of my professors once said to me about stop looking at the map down the road, look at the whole world. And I feel that's what Williamson does for you. That so often as leaders, we're just so busy concentrating on what has to be done that we forget to look outside of that. And I think Williamson reminds you of that and also teaches you to do that. The other thing that Williamson did is it gave me a group of peers that I realised that I actually had a voice within this group of leaderships. And that was really important for me, for my own self-esteem, to know that I have got a place here and I can speak up and I can, what I say does matter. I do have an opinion, and that was very important. I recommend the program today for anyone that's searching for something and they're not quite sure what it is. They can't put their finger on it, but they know that something has to change, and there's that real thought about there's got to be more. And I do think for the program, you do need some life experience. And I think that life experience, whether it's success or failure, Williamson has a space for you. And I really do think that. And it's for extroverts and introverts, and each will find their voice. And I will warn you that when the introverts find their voices, watch out, because they're sick of hearing you extroverts. They really are. And I also think Williamson is for people who are beginning their leadership journey and the people who are in the thick of it. And then I think it's pitched at the different levels. So I think even if you're just beginning this journey, or if you're really, you're already the CEO of a business, or you're already at the top of the pile, I think there's still a lot to be learnt. I also recommend it for people who are trying to grow their contacts. I would meet with Williamson people. I mean, I was the most social, but already this week I've met with 4 separate people, and it's a very deep connection that you'll form with these people. And we can talk about things that I can't possibly talk about with my friends. They would think I was a maniac if I talked about this sort of stuff. But it's a real deep dive into things that are happening in your life, questions you might have about your own leadership, questions that you might have about things that you want to do. And this is a great opportunity to form like a group of people who can help you discuss that and get yourself around it. But there are challenges to the Williamson program, and probably for me, because I was last year, we ended up on Zoom doing the course. But I really don't want people to worry about that if that happens to you next year, because it actually didn't wreck the experience in any way. And the depth of learning and communication and connection, and we had over 60 people on Zoom, was actually extremely powerful, and it in no way diminished the shared experience. And it actually brought us together closer, and we really experienced a very deep dive into the learning. And if you say yes to this commitment, you need to be really honest and have a conversation with your work and your family about the time that you need to be present for the program. And the days are actually pretty intense, and you need to actually get everything you can out of it, and you need to commit. And there is homework to be done, and there's things you need to read and watch beforehand. And I would tell you after each of the days as well, you want to actually stop and have a talk about it, and you want to have a debrief about it with others. For us, it was a phone call. We might hop on the phone to each other. With the programs going forward, it might be you want to have a coffee afterwards, or you want to you just need that space afterwards as well. You need to be prepared for that you might not be able to just go straight back into work or straight back into the family as well. But otherwise, I don't think there's much for me. I don't think there was any more challenges than that. It was just, it's hard work, and just accept it and get on with it. Thanks.
Thanks, Fiona. That was a really good summation of your experience. And I'd now like to invite Darren to speak.
Hi, my name's Darren. I'm a health bureaucrat. I manage a youth mental health team in Geelong. I'm also a psychotherapist in private practice. So I got into Williamson because I was at that point in my career where the logical thing for me to do was to do an MBA. But I found that the prospect of doing that quite boring, uninspiring, and probably with the prospect of me thinking that I was probably going to be churned out speaking in this formulaic MBA speak. So I decided to seek out an alternative route to enhance and improve my leadership and management skills. So I just want to read a quote from Rumi. So yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I'm changing myself. So I think for me, the immersive and transformative potential of the Williamson journey was really, really powerful for me. For me, it was a year of constant irritation, being uncomfortable, but great learning. And I think that the LV training and the tools have the potential for transformation and realignment with values, as long as you take the courage to participate. I did the Williamson course shortly after. I started the Williamson course shortly after my brother had died and my mother was just about to die. So I was full of grief, and I think I was probably a little bit angry, and I was probably a little bit impatient with people and judgmental of their internal and external journeys. But I think for the majority of people who did the course in my year, it was a transformative experience, but uncomfortable experience that brought up issues of vulnerability and the uncomfortableness of not knowing. And I think that in order to elegantly traverse the Williamson journey, it takes humility, a good sense of humour, courage, and the willingness to get out of your comfort zone in order to experiment and try out new ideas and of seeing the world. For me, the year was a constant evaluation of things going on with myself. It allowed me to follow my passion. It was clarifying and listening carefully to my values, actively seeking out people in situations who challenged me, collegiality, having good mentors, having a healthy sense of detachment and emotional intelligence, and a year of radical self-honesty and self-care. So, as I said at the beginning of this talk, I was in that sort of slightly uninspired and quite boring period of my leadership journey, and I really wasn't actively engaged in my workforce. I'd attend meetings and I'd probably just sit there and not really put my hands up for a project or not really sort of get involved in any innovative practices. And what the Williamson program allowed me to do was to reconnect with that disruptive part of myself, where I am comfortable in challenging the status quo, especially in institutions that can get quite sleepy and just go along with the status quo. So the skills that I've learned from Williamson are confidence and the skills and the curiosity to challenge compliant cultures, and to realize that in order to challenge the status quo, you have to invigorate passion and be disruptive. And it's not about staying in your lane, but actually having those uncomfortable conversations and encounters. So my take-home messages from Williamson for that year, that informative year, was that you don't need permission to lead. Actually, you can lead from wherever you are, whether you're a beginner, an early career leader, or an advanced CEO. I learned that words are actually quite cheap, and that actually leadership is about actions and being in the arena. And in order to do that, you really need to polish and work align and align with your values. Change is inevitable, so it's about embracing positive disruption and change, and being able to shape and form that. And challenges, leadership challenges are gifts. You know, they're always a teachable moment. So there's always the ability to constantly evolve. I've been more strategic in choosing my battles and thinking about the long game. And I've been really mindful of the quality of self-care. So the previous speaker talked about being burnt out by leadership. I think I've really connected with that. I really need to take care of myself in order to lead other people and to lead myself. But I think the most important learning and gift that I've had from the Williamson course is about ripening my compassion. I'm less judgmental these days. I'm more curious and willing and able to lean into people who share opinions or display behaviours that are opposite to me. And for me, that has created a more fruitful and palatable world. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. I'd now like to introduce our final alumni speaker, Craig Rowlands.
Thank you, Nathan. Pleasure to speak to you all. I'm going to try and keep mine a little shorter because I know time's precious, and I'm sure you've got lots of questions that you'll want to ask of Lisa, Nathan, Scott, and Fiona, Darren, and myself. I guess the first thing I'm going to say, and which is why you're all here today, is what's in it for you, right? So that's probably the most important factor. What do you get from Williamson that you'll probably get from no other course? That Darren and Fiona have clearly pitched in with their own views, and I'll add mine to that. And I work at a corporate, by the way, so I will say to you that my previous learnings will have been much towards the corporate world and how the corporate world see things. But across your cohort on Williamson, you'll have government, you'll have corporate, you'll have not-for-profit, you'll have volunteering, you'll have the whole gambit, which to me is a fascinating mix of individuals, really good individuals, by the way, extremely clever individuals. So if you're looking at all of these windows that are here today, imagine many of those could be part of your cohort, and all the special skills and qualities that they'll all bring to the table when you're all together across this program, and utilize those. And that's what happened for 2019, certainly for Darren and myself, and sounds like for Fiona as well, through the skills of people like Lisa and Angela. So the first thing is that's wonderful learning, and Lisa, I thank you for that as well, by the way. And two, you'll have lifelong friends off the back of it, as Darren has pointed out. And there will be individuals that you can talk to that you cannot talk to other career type discussions with others. My buddy M, and I won't say any more about M than the fact that we are FaceTiming this coming weekend, but we don't talk about just work anymore. We talk about family, we talk about health, we talk about world issues. It's not just about singularly what went on how we can help each other write a CV or a resume or something like that. We're talking about lifelong friendships. Fiona sounds like she's got many of those as well that she's going through. So they're the benefits of going on this course, and they're very different ways of thinking about things than you would have in the corporate world. The things I'm going to say around the kind of learnings for myself are, I'm much more bolder and much more challenging than I used to be. I'm actually quite introverted by nature, just so everybody's aware. So when Fiona said there's a voice for those individuals, yes, there is. Once you get a word in, then you're good, right? But after that, introverts have a really powerful opinion. So I challenge more, I'm much bolder. I look at more ethical outcomes for my company, which is Medibank, and where we spend our money and what we do, and how we support Australians get better, healthy outcomes. I probably didn't do that before, but I do that now. And I'm much more curious about how we can change things. And as I said, with regard to the boldness, I'm also bolder with regard to my team. I would say there was a style of leadership that I had before that I was quite familiar with and quite used to. I take many more chances now. I call them more calculated risks to get a better outcome. I provide much more delegation authority to all team members for them to be able to exercise leadership as well, because it's not about my journey, it's actually about our journey and what we can do. So from a Medibank point of view, that's been wonderful. I will say there are challenges for you on the course, and you need to be aware of this when you go into it. And Darren and Fiona have already touched upon it. Time. You need to do justice to the program to get the maximum value from it. You need to be very clear with your employers up front about the time that you need, and you need to be very clear with your family about the time that you need to both be immersed in the program, in the doing. As Fiona said, there's homework, whatever you want to call it, but there's lots of learning outside of the days that you're working on those specifics, but also the follow-up behind those. And if you really want to get the best value from this, you're pretty much on it almost every day for that time period, at least some point every day during that time period. That's the best way to get the best outcome that you can, to be a much better leader than you were before you went in, and looking at so many of the social issues. And you can tell by my accent, by the way, I'm English. So my view of Australian history was pretty poor before I came in. Can I just tell you that the insight that I received during that course was phenomenal. I'm also going to say this, and this may be a surprise and will be a surprise to some of you, with regard to making time. Whilst being on the course, and Lisa knows this well, I managed to squeeze in a heart bypass operation. I managed to resolve that and successfully pass, I think, Lisa will tell you, all during that same period. So it's very clearly possible to do these things, to put these processes forward for you to be able to do it. But you have to go in with your eyes open. And I promise you, at the end of it, you will have had a wonderful, life-changing experience. You will focus on your purpose and your core values and what they bring to you and your family. And by the way, they will benefit, not just yourself, and your friends will benefit. So I would say, if you're worried about it, take the risk on, take the challenge on, embrace that fear and enjoy the program for what it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. We now have 24 minutes left before 2 o'clock, so I'd like to use as many of those minutes as possible with your questions. So please, if you do have a question, raise your hand, put it in the chat, and David is our moderator and he'll help get those questions put forward. So I can see there's some comments already from Janelle. Had a question. I was wondering what value this program provides compared with an MBA leadership program. I think Darren, you spoke directly to that, yeah, was there clearly no regrets for choosing the Williamson path, it seemed?
For me, it was a different type of learning and a more transferable type of learning, adaptive, challenging, listening to different voices, being strategic. All the sort of core components that Lisa's referred to in the way that when we navigate all those different themes, they somehow enrich and enhance pre-existing knowledge. And so when I'm writing a policy, for example, I will think about the strategy, the unheard voices in my organisation, how to manage and strategically engage internal and external stakeholders. These are things that are probably a bit more purposefully, clearly articulated in a traditional MBA course. But I think when I was considering doing an MBA and doing the Williamson course, I thought that this would be more of a personable, person-centered, values-driven course. And I didn't really want to fit essay writing into my very busy life.
Thank you, Darren. I can see, David, there's a hand up there from excuse me if I mispronounce your name, Eglantine.
That was perfect. Thank you very much. First of all, I would really like to thank the alumni here who did your testimony was very powerful and so beautiful, so beautiful. So thanks for your openness and the generosity to share that with us. Actually, my question is directly related to that. I'm trying to understand, how do you weave in the experience of the previous program and the different cohorts together?
I suppose that's a question for me in some ways. Yeah. So how do we weave them in? So we often have alumni who come in and speak and spend time with each year's new cohort. So that's one way we weave it together. Also, through the clan projects that the group works on, there is crossover between the particular cohorts. So, for example, this evening we have the Dragon's Den, which is the outcome of the 2020 clans' work on some of the topics they chose to concentrate on, where we'll have participants that are from previous Williamson cohorts who join. Each person who is part of the program leaves their fingerprints on it. And so it sits also in the ways in which we design the program, and actually folks come back and join us throughout Leadership Victoria programs as well, that connection is built to. So Darren has spoken very recently on a program for us and contributes in that way. You'll see alumni who pop up in lots of different ways on our programs.
Thanks, Lisa. I've noticed a question here from Ocean Mind, wondering if the programs will be face-to-face or online in 2022. The intention is to run it face-to-face. It's running face-to-face this year. But it's an interesting question. It's a bigger question, isn't it? Because, you know, we're facing a situation at the moment where we're trying to vaccinate a population to, I guess, you know, prevent further economic shutdowns, prevent further loss of life. And yet there's a rate of hesitancy that we're experiencing in the population. That is a difficult question for our policymakers, for our public health experts, epidemiologists and politicians. And there's probably a whole bunch of themes that sit underneath this idea of vaccine hesitancy. What is it that is preventing some people from wanting to get vaccinated, or why is prevention in public health always been an issue, and why are we as a society much better at putting out the fire than what we were preventing it in the first place? And I think that's a real question of leadership, and I think the Williamson Leadership Program will help you understand that. I guess that question, and understand maybe some approaches to solving or dealing with the question as well.
Yeah, so we endeavour for the program to be face-to-face, but having said that, there's been, so the fact that we can gather you all together on Zoom like this, if you think about if this was a face-to-face event, how that would actually prevent your participation. So we've adapted the program to use the best of Zoom, and also folks' level of comfort with Zoom, with connecting with each other outside of the program in some of the project work that you do together as well. Zoom is a fantastic, awesome tool for that as well. So we aim for our leadership days and our theme days and our immersives to be face-to-face. And then there's a lot of other stuff we do over Zoom as well. But also, you know, we learned last year that we can very quickly adapt. And as Fiona spoke to, it changes your experience, but it doesn't lessen your experience.
Can I just add to that? I would definitely not let that put you off doing the program in any way. So when we went online, we only met once before we went online last year, and there was a lot of panic around it, not from LV, but from the participants about, you know, will they get value for money, and are they going to get everything they need, and how it will change the experience? Because a lot of us came in having heard stories from friends and work colleagues who'd done the course already, you know, so we had an expectation around it, and we didn't get to go to Canberra, which, you know, there was a lot of disappointment around that. But I feel it maybe made our experience even a bit deeper. It was a really deep dive for us, and maybe because of the trauma of COVID as well, that brought us all a bit closer. But, you know, we're at the end of the program now, and we're going next week on a big camp together. I call it camp, for 3 days. So it doesn't stop you from making those connections. And I sometimes think exactly what Lisa said, that it made it a lot easier for us, especially when we were doing a lot of our clan work and things like that, that we could just meet so easily. You know, it was just an hour of time rather than half an hour traveling there and then trying to get home, and you can be in your pajamas. And yeah, so I definitely wouldn't let it put you off doing the course with that threat behind it.
Thanks, Fiona.
There's another. Yeah, sorry, Nath. There's another good question comes from Anthony. So, how many contact hours/days are there generally? I think that's probably a good one for you, Lisa.
Yeah. So there are generally 2 contact days a month: your leadership day and your theme day, or immersives if the leadership days and theme days aren't happening. In addition, so I'm a planner. And I like to read everything in advance. So I would, if it was me, I'd allocate like at least another 2 days in my month to focus on the program that might be spread out over that time. But also I'm keen to hear from Craig or Fiona or Darren as a participant in the program. What would you say?
I'll probably start, Lisa. So those days when you're together can be a weekend. So just so everybody's aware, it's not just midweek. So it's weekend participation. So that's what I mean about just making sure that you've had those conversations with your family and they're well aware of the commitment that you're going to make, because there are some things that you may miss, some family things, but they are well worth it for that time period. That's number one. Number two, with regard to the reading materials, the updates, etc. I'm going to say for most courses, you've probably got those things anyway. So if you think this is any different from the fact that you have to educate yourself and you have to prepare and you have to go in with your whole self, then this is no different from any other course from that point of view. So they would be an expectation anyway. So I wouldn't say that they're too hard. I think that the thing that you'll find more than anything else is on the back of some fairly full-on days, you're fairly whacked at the end of it, right? So, and you also need some thinking time to digest that information afterwards. So let's say you've done a Saturday, you might want some of the Sunday to spend that time to digest that information, right? That's the kind of handshake with the family that you'll need to have an agreement with beforehand when you go in. And I guarantee, because your family will want the best for you anyway, that they'll be happy, very happy to accept that because they know the outcome for you. I'm probably going to say one thing that's actually quite contentious here, right? So, and this contentious thing is many people on our program, after spending that time delving into leadership and delving into themselves and what they were looking for, many of them actually change roles either during the course or post the course, because they were moving to things that they wanted to do after spending the time analysing their core values and their true north. That's the benefit that this brings you.
Thanks, Craig. Scholarship places. There are scholarship places. Question from PD. They are listed on the Leadership Victoria website. There's a few different categories. So feel free to jump onto the Williamson Leadership page of the Leadership Victoria website at leadershipvictoria.org. And you'll be able to find the different scholarships and the eligibility criteria for those scholarships on our webpage.
A bit of extra context to that as well is that as a part of the actual application process or the application form, there is options to just tick which scholarship that you're going for or which ones that you're going for. So yeah, do an application and tick those things just so we've got that context.
So is any more questions from anybody? Eglantine.
Do you mind if I jump in as well? I was just trying to type. I don't type fast enough. We've heard a lot of positive story. Do you have less positive story? Do you have people who really don't find themselves in the program, who feel inadequate, who leave the program? And if so, what are the patterns that you're observing? What would make someone less successful in joining?
It's a good question.
So I would say, but I equally would like to hear from our alum, that if you are looking for a program where you can come into the room and sit quietly and like to digest a whole lot of expertise and wisdom from someone driving a PowerPoint at the front of the room, then this is not the program for you. That you'll get out of this program what you put into it, but it is not a program that you can kind of consume to then tick off your list and whack it on your CV. It is a program to be engaged with and to engage with the folks around you in that. So the question about, I'm thinking about an MBA, how does that compare to Williamson? In Williamson, there are no assignments, there are no essays. It's about your participation, about you showing up, and also the role that you play within the groups that you will be assigned to, and you hold each other to account for that. So if you want that kind of passive learning experience where you can choose how much of yourself you put out there, then Williamson is not for you. And then the question about does anyone kind of get left behind along the way? No. That doesn't happen. And it's actually quite a common thing at the start of the year that you all show up in the room and wonder whether or not you're meant to be there. But if you're selected for the program, you are meant to be there.
I guess it's an important point, Lisa, around the application process as well helps kind of identify that as well. There's something around being sort of Williamson ready. So kind of going through that application process will help with that sort of situation.
Craig or Fiona or Darren, you see what goes on, amongst the cohort in a way that sometimes I do not. What would you say?
Well, I would say that life doesn't get in the way for a lot of people. Like Craig talked about his heart operation. We had 3 women give birth during the course, and they still got through the course, and people lost jobs and had big job changes. And we had quite a few people on the course who were in charge of keeping us safe from COVID. So you can just imagine the workload that those people had. It was insane. But the one thing that really resonated with me, Lisa, just then was you said that nobody's left behind, and that's absolutely true. Nobody is left behind. And it's not just Leadership Victoria checking up on you, it's actually the cohorts themselves. So the connection becomes very strong very fast, and you're buddied up and you're claned up and you've got all sorts of things. So you're checking in with each other all the time. And because it takes away a lot of your inhibitions, it makes you more raw and open. People aren't afraid to sort of connect with you and say, hey, what's going on? Or people aren't really afraid to step outside and say, hey, I need help and I can't get my head around this and things like that. Because there are a lot of that sort of stuff. I mean, I still talk to my buddy every week, he talks about his job challenges and his successes and things like that. And the other thing as well is we did lose some people along the way, and they're people who really didn't make the commitment. It was on them. It absolutely was on them, not on the course. It really was. So that was their choice, and that's fine. That's their choice to do that. I feel sorry for them that they chose that. But yeah, it's up to you to put into it what you want to get out.
Thanks, Fiona. Do we have any more questions? Oh, yes, another one. Oh, no. PD, is your hand up?
Is it? Sorry, I didn't mean it to be.
Oh, no, that's okay. No. All right. I think we're finished with the questions. So there's a tradition.
Sorry, Nathan, just one final question just slid in. And it's from Anthony. Anthony, did you want to pop off mute and share your question?
Thanks, David. Yeah, I was just curious, is there a kind of a philosophical underpinning for the program? Where is it coming from?
Yes, I think the predominant one is the way that we think about leadership. and that leadership is distinct from authority, which is a role that you are, you might be given from an organisation, but leadership is a practice versus an authority role. And leadership as a practice, if you think about it in that way, it means that anyone can exercise leadership anytime, anywhere. It's just that it's incredibly risky to do so. So that is the main philosophical underpinning of the program, that when the cohorts engage with one another, that is the thing I think that would come through.
Great. Okay. Well, I might say thank you now to our 3 alumni who have been very generous with their time and their knowledge today. We have a tradition at Leadership Victoria where we thank our speakers with a pair of socks, and it's really interesting that all of you have been so open and honest and courageous with your presentations today, and it's very much a hallmark, I think, of the Williamson program that allows you to do that. My own experience, I haven't done the Williamson program myself, but I was very fortunate to attend the opening retreat this year. And I also, in my spare time, present a community radio program. And I've learned a lot about leadership through that program because I have the great privilege to speak to amazing people every week from different sectors, different professions, around speaking about issues of biodiversity, of public health, of aged care, of bushfire prevention, of our relationship with our First Peoples. And what I've discovered through the combination of the Williamson retreat that I attended and speaking to these people is that leadership, to me, as I understand it, is simply stepping up and stepping into an unknown, stepping into the void. And anyone can do that at anywhere, anytime. It's risky, it's often complicated. There's lots of interrelating parts. There's overlapping bits that makes things really complex. But through Williamson, you can learn how to plot a path through that complexity and give you the capability and the courage to step up and into the unknown. And as you do that, and as you go through your leadership journey, part of the Williamson socks, which have been designed by a Williamson alumni, Laura Thompson, who operates Clothing the Gap, is to remember always that we are walking on lands that have been cared for and nurtured for over 60,000 years by our First Peoples. So thank you to Fiona, to Craig, and to Darren. And your socks will be in the mail. So I think that concludes our formal presentation today. You will receive an email after this session. In that email, there'll be a link to open an application. Hopefully, after this session, you will have a greater understanding and a feeling for whether Williamson is the right thing for you. And if it is, please don't hesitate. Go on, click the link, open an application, because you can save it and come back to it over the next few months as much as you want. But it would be good to at least go on and have a look at the questions in that application process, because that will also help form your thinking around the program and your application. And if you would like to speak to me or another team member, there'll be a link in that email as well to book a time with me. I'm happy to chat further about the program and if needs be, put you in touch with other people as well. So I think we are right on time. Thanks, everybody.